So I wanted to do a video about what we've learned about FPV racing this year. I started, the first FPV racing I did was last September 2014, where I went to a couple of events where we raced about 5 of us, all with 5x3 props, mostly on 3S, but a bit of a mix. And what I loved was how close it was. So we've all been flying around through trees and small gaps on our own, which is great fun and a real challenge to start with. But once you get, confident doing that, you need something more to hold your appeal. And to me, it was always flying with other people. So to be able to fly 3 or 4 quads, all literally exactly the same speed, battling back and forward, going through gaps and air gates and pool noodle hoops, was absolutely brilliant. And that's what I wanted to capture. So over the last winter, I started thinking about what do we need to get to do this. And so I came up with some goals, some aims for me, because I'm very goal oriented. The first thing I wanted to do, my 3 big ticks were, 1, I wanted to come up with a cheap course that was easily portable, that anyone could replicate, so that local groups around the villages, towns, country could set up and with a few friends cheaply book a course together, have some practice racing, and then meet up with each other to race, against each other. So that was the first thing, a cheap course. The second thing was to sort of encourage a low cost fun spec, so to have fairly standardized quads that are from commonly available parts. And if you look around, all of the quads really are can be run on 3S. Almost all the motors are in the sort of 2300 2400 kV range, so on 3S they really suit a 5x3 prop. 5x3 props are the cheapest and easiest props to get. And what we found when we did the couple of races back in September 14 was that if everyone was running 5x3 props, it pretty much equalised the performance regardless of everything else. So we had different motors, different frames, we even had some on 4S, and all running 5x3 props, the quads were really close. And it was really obvious, because when you come out of the start, you're basically, all of you will go into that first bend all together, and then when you come down the long straight, if you're 5 feet behind someone at the beginning of the straight, you're pretty much going to be 5 feet behind them when you get to the middle, which is what I want. I see a lot of FPV racing videos on the internet now, which are what I would call a time trial, because you have 3 or 4 or 5 quads on the start, and then you 3, 2, 1 go, and then they disappear, and you basically see someone flying around on their own. Now, I can fly around on my own anytime I like. I'm really lucky in that I've got a flying club I can go to. I've got a field next to the house that I can fly around. So to fly around on my own is of no interest to me at all. Also, again, the time trial thing, I can see that some people like that, and if that's your thing, then fine. But to me, FPV racing is all about the excitement of being close to another quad, battling for position, bumping into each other and then crashing or carrying on. That's what I love. So the spec was really important to me. And then the third goal I had was to have monthly practice FPV racing meetings that were self-managing, so that no one had to run them, especially not me. I have a young family and my free time is really limited. So to me, what I needed was somewhere I could just go to the field, I could set it up, and then it would run itself. Oh, and sorry, and the last thing, not really a goal, but I do RC and quadcopter and FPV and all the other is a hobby for me. And to me, it's really important that I distinguish between things I do for fun and things I do for money. So, if I'm working or doing things unpaid, everything is very different, and it's fine, but it's very different. So the things I do for a hobby, I do for fun and enjoyment, and I don't want there to be any commercial aspect to that at all. So I never wanted sponsorship. I've been offered I review bits and bobs on my YouTube channel. I've often been offered free things to review, and I will never accept them. I never have. I've only ever reviewed things that I bought and paid for with my own money, partly because I can choose what I want to do and how much, but also because if something is appalling or rubbish, I have to be able to be truthful, otherwise there's no point. All these companies produce their own adverts. I certainly don't want to be involved in that, unless they would pay me a full-time salary that I could live on, but that's never going to be the case. So to me, it was always important it was non-commercial. So anyway, those are my goals. So over the winter, I came up with the design for the air gates using PVC pipe, which is really cheap. So you can get from Toolstation or Screwfix or any supplier really 22mm or 3/4 inch PVC pipe for about $50 or about £35. You can build a full course. So that's 4 air gates and 4 corner markers, which is more than enough really. To be honest, I think 4 air gates is probably is certainly generous. Depending on your layout, you can get away with 2. The second thing I did was I found some frequency tags on RC groups where you have basically it allocates the this is just the sheet, but each of the bands of frequencies are split into racer A, B, C, D, E and F. So then I print these out and laminate them, and then we have these tags show the frequencies that are available. So each person goes up to the chair, there's a bag of tags, they take the tag that's free, then they change their channel to that tag, so that you can say, right, who wants to race? And if anyone's ready to race and there's a tag, they can just change their channel, jump in. So no one has to manage the frequencies, it avoids the bickering over, oh, this is my channel, because no one owns a channel, you just use the next one available. Then in terms of the race format, we have a course laid out with a start box and a start line, and we do really short 2-lap races. Now the reason for doing 2-lap races is a few things. One is, what I found from the racing is that most people can't do 2 laps. So there's no point in having a 5-lap or a 10-lap or a 100-lap race, because no one will finish it. So the second thing is, the most exciting part of the racing is when you're all close together. And that is really the start and the first lap. And as we get better, I'm sure it would get to the second lap and potentially more. But for now, the best we could do was one really good close lap. And then generally on the second lap, it would thin out, people would crash. And so you'd actually only get 1 or 2 people maybe finishing. So at 2 laps, you can then stop the race, and then everyone can grab their quad, go back to the start and start again. So it means that if you crash out at the start, you literally wait a minute and then you're back in a race. So you haven't come out for the day and only got a couple of races in, which I really didn't want. The second thing is, to me, a large event is a lot of headache, both in terms of frequency management, in terms of results, timing, equipment, all of that. And I wanted to avoid all of that for this, because for small groups to be able to go out and practice and race and then improve their skills and so on, you've got to make it really quick and easy. So the way that we do that is that when we start the race with 3, 2, 1, go, you take it in turns to say 3, 2, 1, go. When you cross the line, you shout lap or 1, and then when you finish the race, you shout finish. Now, even with the goggles on, I can know my position, because if I go through the first lap and I say lap first, I know I'm in the lead. If 2 people say lap before me, I know I'm third. If someone crashes, they shout crashed. And then when you finish, again, the first person to finish says finished, and you know if that was you, you've won. The second person says finished, you know that was second, third, and so on. So that was really important. And because we're all practicing, winning the races to me isn't that important. I mean, it's fun when you win and everyone wants to win, but to me the excitement was having another race, getting a close, coming through a corner really close together, and getting really good video. And so the other thing I've done, which I always done, is at the starts I always hang back, because I don't want to be in front, because then there's no one in front of me for the video. And whilst some people are motivated by going the fastest, being in front, to me it was always about the action, the excitement, the crashing, near missing, squeezing through air gates. So when we do 3, 2, 1, go, I would always count to 3 and then go, so that everyone else would start in front of me, so that I would try to chase them through the course, because that's what's exciting, is seeing them all tussling, bumping into people and so on. So that was another thing that was really important to me, and I think that has worked really well. And I think we showed with the monthly meetings, which we started in February, that a lot of people are really enthusiastic. They get that this is for fun. You want a cheap quad. This quad, this is my racing quad. It's an FPV 250. This is a $10 frame. The cage on top is another like $5. So for £10, basically, that my whole frame. These aren't the original motors. The original motors were RCX 1804 motors that are about £5 each. It's still got the original, they're cheap Afro speed controllers, 12s. It's got a KK2 flight controller. It's got an orange receiver. This whole quad without the FPV gear, I think, was £65. The FPV gear, I happen to have the Fat Shark stuff on this because I've got it with my goggles, but I've since run up a set with the with cheaper gear, and it works fine. I've got the Aonway 200mW transmitter and the camera, and that is fine. So you could have a complete quad flying for £100 or less. which is great because you don't want to be precious about it. You want to fly it and crash it and laugh about it. On my original quad, in the first 6 months meetings and all my proximity flying before, I've crashed, I counted them actually, there's over 150 props here that are broken. So given that I don't break a prop every crash, I would estimate that's 200 or 300 crashes. And I never broke this quad. All I ever broke was propellers. I've had wires come out, I had to resolder. I've had the flight controller I've popped from messing about and I've had to amend it. But everything on this quad was flying when I swapped the motors over. The reason I swapped the motors was just to try some bigger 1806 motors, which actually don't make any difference, so I could swap them back. I'm just too lazy. But the point is, this is a cheap fun quad that any frame with similar motors and props would be competitive with, so that people can come out and see us racing and think, and they say, what do you need to buy? And you can say, well, actually, you go to any of the websites, any of the bundles you can buy for a 3S quad with 5x3 props, it will compete. It'll be as quick as this, and you can come out, and if you're better than me, you'll beat me. And that's what it should be about. It should be about practice and, skill and fun. It shouldn't be about who's got the most expensive battery or motor or anything else. The problems we had, frequency management is the first problem, and these tags really worked well with that. Now then, the issues that we do have is a lot of people don't know how to change their channel, or think they've changed it and they haven't, or just don't want to change channel. Those are issues. Now, I don't know what the answer to that is. I've never been bothered by it. I've got a little hole underneath so I can get to my dip switches. On my flight box, I've got the little chart which shows the channels and the dip switch positions. So if I'm using a tag A and someone else wants it and I go to tag D, literally it takes me 30 seconds. I then turn my goggles on first and I change my goggles to the channel that I'm going for. So if I'm expecting to be on channel 5, I will change my goggles to channel 5. And then when I plug in my battery, if I don't immediately see my picture, I know I'm on the wrong channel and I unplug it. Now, to be honest, that's only happened to me once. But if it does happen, you immediately unplug and you haven't destroyed someone else's view more than is inevitable. So it's really not that difficult. The second thing we've had fallouts over is spec. We've always made it clear that we were trying to do cheap fun racing with 5x3 props. Now, we hoped that everyone would have 3S quads, and we hoped that they would have, sort of 2400 kV motors. But we always made it clear from the start that if anyone had anything else, whatever it was, they could come along and race. But we asked, could they run 5x3 props, just because that keeps it fair, fun and slow. And almost everyone was happy with that. But we did have someone who was a sponsored pilot, who wanted to, I guess, show how fast they were. And I offered them free props to run 5x3 props, but it didn't work out, and we had a problem there. The thing about running the slow 5x3 props is a few things. One is that you're really running slowly, so the motors are not stressed, the speed controllers are not stressed. You're pulling like 5 to 7 amps on a motor with a 5x3 prop, which any motor can take. If you've got the cheapest motor you can get, like an RCX, or you've got a really expensive Cobra or T motor, it won't make any difference. And that's what you want. You want it to be about the practice and the skill, not about who's got the most expensive motor. The second thing is with lipos. You can run really cheap lipos with 5x3 props, because you're only drawing maybe 20 amps spike at most. Most of the time you're hovering around 6-7 amps. These cheap Turnigy batteries, any of these are fine. Now these are my original 250 packs, which I bought in April 2014. Now I started off with I think 6, and I think 5 of them are still usable. So they're a little tiny bit puffy, but I still fly with these, and they still fly fine. I still get 5 minutes easily out of them. On a brand new pack, I'll get 6 or 7 minutes. So these are some newer ones that are actually rock solid. I'll get 6 or 7 minutes out of this. Now that's important because it means you get a lot of flying without having to buy loads of batteries. If you've got a decent charger, you can almost fly continuously, because it takes hardly more time to charge a couple of packs than it does to fly a couple of packs. So you don't need lots of packs. The other thing is that there's no advantage to having the fantastic 90C lipos. As soon as you allow more choice, you'll get 4S packs, high kV motors, big props like the 545 bullnose, which are drawing 25-26 amps per motor. That's 100 amps for the quad. That then means you need to run massive C packs, say 90C packs. It also means you're getting really short flights. So racing, you would be looking at perhaps getting 2 minutes, 2 minutes 30 out of a pack. Now if you imagine the load that puts on the battery, that battery is going to deteriorate almost immediately. So within 5 to 10 cycles, that pack is going to be measurably worse. So you'll end up with, if you want to be the fastest, you need almost to have new packs for every event. You will need expensive packs for every event. It all just gets out of hand. You then get to a situation where you've got someone who has got perhaps £500 or £600 in their outfit in terms of their frame. They've got an expensive £100 carbon frame. They've got expensive, £20 motors. They're running, the speed controllers. They need then get more expensive. They're then going to get precious about, if I'm, enjoying myself and I crash into someone on a corner, I can laugh it off because it doesn't matter to me. If I wreck this quad, it doesn't matter. But if you've got £500 or £600 in it, then it does matter. So that upsets people, causes arguments, and takes away the fun, and that's what it's all about. The other good thing about a cheap quad is you can afford to have a spare. So, for example, this is my backup, which actually broke. This broke last weekend before last, so I need to swap the frame over. But this was my backup quad, and it never flew very well because I always liked my prime, so I never actually got this set up properly. But it meant that if we were out for a day and I, break something on the first run, I don't have to go home. I can carry on. And that's the thing about having a cheap quad. You can have 2 of them. So that's really important to me. Also, running on 3S, simple things like you've got you can run LEDs and cameras straight off the 3S. You don't need to have power drops or complications like that. It's slow, so the crashes are slow. So if you're flying over grass, you generally won't break anything but a prop, which means you get back flying again in a couple of minutes. Things like flat motors. I don't think lots of options is a good thing. So, for example, say someone comes out with a brand new motor or a brand new frame and that makes you faster, then everyone then has to change to that brand new motor or brand new frame, and then you're all back to where you started again. And then a new motor comes out, or a new frame, or tilts, or a new prop, and you all buy those, and then you're back to where you started again. And if you want to have close fun racing, then it doesn't matter how fast or slow everyone's going. It matters that everyone's going the same speed and at the lowest cost to have the most fun. So that's why things like tilts on the motors, I don't know if there's much benefit at all. I suspect there isn't very much, because effectively the aerodynamic drag on this is horrible anyway, and you're not going fast enough that it would make a difference. But by saying the motors have to be flat, you basically remove that hassle, so that people don't have to spend days testing with different tilts and arrangements and trimming and tuning, because everyone runs flat motors so that you can all run the same. The frame sizes, again, we said, ideally we're aiming towards a 230 to 290 mil, and the reason for that was because most of the frames were around 250, but some are a little smaller, some are a little bigger, and we didn't want to exclude any. We also didn't want to allow really small frames because they would be much faster. We don't want to complicate things by allowing a huge range, so you want all of the quads to pretty much look the same, so that if someone comes along and says, oh, this looks fun, and they see that all the quads are pretty much the same, then they're confident that they can just go and buy another one that looks the same and be competitive and have fun and join in. If there's a huge bewildering range of things, they say, which should I buy? The first guy they speak to will say, oh, you want to get a tricopter, get a big tricopter, they're much quicker and smoother. And then the second guy will say, oh no, you want like a 200 mil quadcopter, they're definitely faster. And then the next guy will say, oh, you want a hex. Hex is quicker. This is a beautiful hex with tilt motors. This is the fastest of all. And people just get confused and bogged down and give up. So that's why you really got to keep it simple and tight. The other thing is, bind and fly, there's quite a few, like the Vortex and Mach 25, so you want to make sure you include those, because a Vortex on 3S with 5x3 props would be performance-wise, immeasurably close to this. It will be fine. The same with the Mach 25, again, it's 5x3 props, it's 3S. You could run a race between this, a ZMR 250, a Vortex and a Mach 25, and if the pilots were all as good, they would all finish together. And you can see from our races, especially the early ones, from the start, the first corner through the first air gate, we're all literally on top of each other, which shows how close the performance is between hugely different. Everyone had different motors, different frames, all homemade stuff, but the performance was really good and close. So those are the things around spec. The other problem we had was safety. We had simple rules. We had a flight line, don't fly over the flight line. Again, a couple of people struggle with that. They want to do flips and things over the pilots, or they don't realise they're doing flips over the pilots. It's just, I don't know what the answer to that is. I mean, we have a briefing, always have a briefing at the beginning, say this is the flight time, don't fly near the cars, don't fly over pilots, stick within 30 feet or 10 metres of the course, don't go off flying around the trees. And and most people were fine with that. But I don't know whether it's because it's a new activity and people haven't been used to any kind of rules or restrictions, or people just like flying fast up and down a field normally, so maybe that's what they do when they get frustrated trying to get around a course. So, but either way, that was one of the things. The other thing is around the course, what was important to me was to have a clearly marked course, and the air gates are optional. If you can fly around the course, then whether you're over or through the air gate is purely just throttle positions. What you want, obviously, is eventually everyone to be low racing so that the air gates squeeze everyone together, so you're all close together, then you get through a couple of corners and you squeeze back together to keep it close and fun. But to start with, if people want to fly over the top of the air gates, that's absolutely fine. It's not important. What's important is they follow the course and that they have fun. And as they practice and get more confident, if they want to do one of the air gates, maybe the last one or the first one, and then maybe practice a bit more and do all of them, that's fine. And also, whilst if you're strictly competing, if you miss an air gate, you should go around and come back through. For practicing and for fun, it doesn't matter. And if people missed a couple of air gates, we made a joke about it, we laughed about it. But that, I think, it's important to make it clear to everyone that it is difficult and everyone has to start somewhere. And what's important is that you have fun and it's affordable and you develop and practice. Not that you're doing the full course perfectly on your first attempt, because that's just not realistic. So looking forward then, we've done 9 monthly meetings. The first 4 or 5 were open and we had people coming in. They were starting to build momentum. We then had a couple of problems with troublemakers, which lost us the use of the field we were using. So the last few we've done invitation only on smaller venues in gardens and great locations that people have found us, and huge thanks for that. But it wasn't really what I wanted. But I don't know if we'll do any more next year. We'll see. I see quite a few groups starting, and I'm hoping that they'll get a bit more organised in terms of running similar gate sizes, similar course, similar, a format, so that I can go and race at someone else's field and just enjoy myself and not worry about hassles. But we'll see. But my real hopes for FPV racing, really, perhaps not next year, but the year after. The first is really a clear spec class emerging, because I really think it's critical that we establish a spec class, whatever that is. And I like 3S 5x3 props, but it doesn't have to be that. It wouldn't matter to me what it was. What would be important to me is that it was a cheap class, that it was tightly controlled, so you don't have to buy lots of different parts or keep upgrading parts to stay competitive. You could buy an outfit and run it for a couple of seasons and not expect to have to replace anything other than breakages and wear and tear, which is fine. That doesn't seem to be happening, and I see quite a few racing leagues and organisations around, and they all seem to have really open rules, like any up to 4S, up to 6-inch props, which just means that every time a new motor or a new battery or a new prop comes out, everyone's having to re-kit, which is just not sustainable. So that, I really hope, a really clear spec class. The second thing I'd like to see is a standard course, a standard size of air gates. Not that you have to buy air gates, because they're really expensive. And that's great for people who want to do that. But what I'd like is to say, an air gate has to be a minimum of this size, a maximum of this size, and then people can make them out of PVC pipe like I have, or they can buy them or whatever. And that if you then get practice on that and race on that course layout, if you want to go and race with someone else or another group, you can just jump straight in and you'll be comfortable with their air gates because they're similar to your air gates. And the same with the course layouts. It'd be really great, I think, to have standard layouts, so like a figure 8 or kidney or whatever, which are approximately the same size, so that you could practice on a course at your local club, and then if you wanted to go up to an event that was a couple of towns over, or a regional event, you wouldn't be uncomfortable with the type of course and the layout, because it's what you're used to. So that's really important to me. And then the last thing is a race format that doesn't require a computer. So simple frequency management using tags, and some kind of race format where you can have races where everyone gets lots of race time. You're not sort of turning up and have a race in the morning and then a final in the afternoon, and if you crash out, you've basically spent a day to do a couple of seconds of flying. So instead, something where you can have a format that suits anything from 3 guys that just meet up at the club and just set up some cones, and they can say, oh, I was first, I get X points, or second, third, fourth, whatever. Or you can have like 15 people at a club say, oh, let's have a race on Sunday afternoon, and they can set out a course, and they can then have points and a format that then they can compare with the next club across and say, oh, if we meet up to race, we'll do the same thing. Now with model car racing, this has been around for ages. You have 5-minute heats and then an ABC final, and you can do that with a clipboard and a stopwatch. You can do it with a computer just by tapping buttons when people cross the line. or you can buy a £1,000 worth of or more worth of transponder equipment and decoders and have transponders on every vehicle, and that's fine. And so what I'd like is to see the same idea where you have a race format that doesn't need a computer, that 3 guys can meet up in a field and do it, or a club with 15 or 20 people can organise a race afternoon and do it, or when you go to a big event, whilst they will use a computer, they will follow that same format. So, like for example, the 2-lap races, I think, really short, fast, action-packed races, and have lots of races, so that if you crash out at the beginning of the race, you can jump in and have another go. So that if someone comes out to race and they go for a day and they get 10 or 15 races, that to me is a lot better than you go out and you have one or 2 heats or 3 heats and a final, where you could literally get a minute's racing and go home, which I don't think anyone wants. So yeah, so that's what I'd like to see. I don't know if it'll happen, but I thought it was a useful video to make. So if you want to comment positively, constructively, it'd be great to see some comments below, and I'll try and reply as I always do.